Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. Even though suits in general have gotten less popular, the double-breasted suit, even more so than the single-breasted suit, has all but vanished from offices, streets, and occasions where you could maybe wear a suit. So the question arises, why did they fall out of favor? And we'll talk about the 8 reasons in this video today. By the way, spoiler alert, we hope it'll make a resurgence. Few articles in your wardrobe capture the essence of elegant clothing as well as a double-breasted suit. This style of suit silhouette reached its peak at the Golden Age of Menswear in the 1930s, but also through the 1940s. As the years went on, it became less popular. I mean, yes, with exceptions. Think about Wall Street in the 1980s or Giorgio Armani suits of the 1990s. They often were double-breasted. Honestly, at that time, the double-breasted suit didn't really look that great, so I rather wish that period didn't happen. With that said, we have 8 reasons why double-breasted suits fell out of favor. 1. Double-breasted suits and jackets have a somewhat dated appearance that to some people may even seem costumey. Given that the double-breasted suit was so popular during the 30s and 40s, we often associate its look with that era. Prominent historical figures such as Winston Churchill or Al Capone famously wore double-breasted suits, but they have been dead for quite a while. Later, Batman villains like the Joker or Max Schreck were inspired by the double-breasted suit in that Gotham vintage-style movie from Tim Burton. Think about the purple double-breasted suit the Joker wore. This further cemented the double-breasted suit more in the cosplay arena, and it wasn't associated by elegant men who wanted to wear a suit about town. Another reason double-breasted suits started to fall out of favor, even in the 40s, was the cloth rationing. Because of the war effort, cloth was rationed. So, for example, turn-ups or cuffs on your pants were not encouraged, sometimes disallowed. The full-cut pants from the 30s were slimmed down. And if you think about it, a double-breasted jacket has 2 layers of fabric versus a single-breasted uses less fabric, so it was also encouraged to wear a single-breasted rather than a double-breasted suit. Of course, just like with many things in fashion, things come and they go, and fashion designers typically pick up on a traditional style, change a few things, sometimes exaggerate, and there you have the latest fashion. That's exactly what happened in the 1980s and 90s. Armani took the traditional 30s and 40s double-breasted silhouette, added a lot of shoulder padding and more drape, and voila, a new style was born. Think less Humphrey Bogart, more 90s football player. Also, the buttoning point changed, where in the 30s the buttoning point was closer to the natural waist, which is typically around your belly button. In the 90s, that shifted quite a bit down. Just think about Miami Vice, and their double-breasted suits definitely became part of the yuppie culture. Wall Street was a bit better because it was styled by Alan Flusser, so Michael Douglas wore a quite nice double-breasted suit. Nevertheless, the association of double-breasted suits with Miami Vice created this association with yuppie culture and not with an elegant man. Of course, there were other movies. Just look at Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, and I think we covered that movie and its style elements in depth here if you want to check it out. Even with more modern movie iterations, like the Kingsman series, the double-breasted suit has now slightly more positive connotations, but it's still tied to more an old spy look. All these associations have helped to perpetuate the stereotype that a double-breasted suit is not something you wear in your normal life. Which brings us to point number 2. Double-breasted suits have fallen out of favor because they're often associated with old age. And in a culture as youth-obsessed as ours today, who wants to look old? If you go through your grandma and grandpa's family photo album, chances are you'll see double-breasted suits. But if you never see them around you today, you automatically associate it with something worn in an era gone by. The same can be said for pleated pants or high-waisted pants. A lot of people associate it with grandpa or great-grandpa clothes, but now there are also a few fashion brands who embrace the wider, fuller cut again and like pleats. We, the Gentleman's Gazette, believe that style shouldn't be so dictated by the fashion of the day, but more by your personal physique and what's flattering for you. Also, if you think about it, in the last 20-25 years, the slim-fit suit has been all the rage. Now, double-breasted suits were often cut a little bit roomier with a little bit more drape, so automatically there was kind of a misfit. On top of that, many older men who just recently retired still wear their slacks and blazers that are double-breasted from a time in the 90s when everything was oversized. Now, it was never a flattering look to begin with, but with their physique change, it's even worse. So a lot of young men don't want to be associated with the almost stigmatized old man look. Now, on the flip side, there has also been somewhat of a resurgence of the double-breasted sport coat, not necessarily the suit. So people like Lino Ieluzzi, who's also not the youngest guy anymore, started wearing them kind of very casually in bold fabrics with patch pockets. And younger people picked up that style, so if you go to Pitti Uomo, you see a lot more casual double-breasted jackets, but also suits. Obviously, the double-breasted look is not something that is just associated with old age. It can also be worn by young people, and quite well so too. The third reason double-breasted suits have fallen somewhat out of favor is that they create naturally a much broader silhouette, which is at odds with the slim-fit suits trend that we've experienced for the last 2 decades. By the sheer design of the double-breasted jacket with the peak lapels, you automatically get a broader shoulder. This is owed to the military influences, where you also had peak lapels and typically the double row of buttons. It creates a certain sense of formality and presence. Now, if you compare that to the skinny, single-breasted lapels that were popular in recent years, you can easily see how just the nature of the double-breasted jacket is at odds with that style. That being said, you can definitely find very skinny lapelled double-breasted jackets these days from fashion-forward brands, but that's not a mainstream look that's available to a lot of people. Nor should it be. Why, you might ask? Well, if you take a double-breasted suit and you change the button stance, you slim everything down, it can very quickly look quite weird. If not weird, then definitely hyper-trendy. Now, in line with the lapel shape and paired with the fact that double-breasted jackets are by design meant to be buttoned, you automatically get this V shape, which a lot of people associate with muscular men who work out a lot. So if you don't do that, you can't wear that suit. Some people may also argue that a double-breasted suit, more so than a single-breasted one, will highlight your gut or your belly or your dad bod. Others will say that especially thinner men will look buried in the layers of fabric, which will make them look shrimpy. Just think of Niles Crane from Fraser. Though it's worth noting that the costume designers put Niles in an oversized suit for a comedic effect, it was supposed to highlight and emphasize the yuppie culture of the pretentious, pompous person who was wearing that suit. Again, in movies and series, clothes are often used to emphasize or stylize a message that is supposed to be portrayed in the movie. That being said, all clothes to some extent have the purpose to hide certain defects or imperfections and highlight other things. So, for example, think of shoulder pads. The only reason you have shoulder pads is not a practical one, but simply to make you look in a certain way. If you have a lot of shoulder pad, it's supposed to look bigger, more impressive. If you have no shoulder pads, it is different. But clothing in general will always help to highlight certain areas and detract from others. The fourth reason double-breasted suits have fallen out of favor is that they're associated with a very formal style, and in general, society has gravitated something towards much more casual. Now, it's true, double-breasted suits are generally more formal than their single-breasted counterparts, especially when they come in darker colors or stripes. It's often associated with a uniform worn by investment bankers, regular bankers, or maybe attorneys. Now, even if you take two suits in the same fabric, the double-breasted would have historically always been considered to be more formal. But why is that? They have a military background, but a peak lapel is considered to be always more formal than a notched lapel. That's why, for example, on a tuxedo, you typically have peaked lapels because it's a more formal garment than a regular suit. Also, on a white tie tailcoat, you typically have peaked lapels for the exact same reason. By the way, if you want to learn more about black tie, we have the world's most comprehensive guide on our website here. The other reason why a double-breasted suit is more formal is its pocket shape. Now, typically, a double-breasted suit will have a jetted pocket, which is the most formal, or maybe a flap pocket, which is slightly less formal. Only in recent years have you seen double-breasted suits or jackets with patch pockets, which are distinctly less formal. By the way, to learn more about formality in clothes and what influences what and how you can adjust your outfit to the formality scale you want, check out this video. Another drawback of the double-breasted jacket is that you typically have to wear it buttoned if you want to avoid bat wings. What I mean by that? Well, if you unbutton the double-breasted suit, you have these massive flaps of cloth there that almost look like bat wings. Now, with a single-breasted jacket on the other hand, you can leave it unbuttoned and it still looks fine, especially compared to an unbuttoned double-breasted jacket. Of course, if you wear a three-piece suit or a waistcoat underneath, oftentimes men intentionally leave their jacket unbuttoned. Though double-breasted three-piece suits are quite rare and were something that was popular during a time when central heating wasn't very prevalent and having that extra layer of fabric underneath was more of a necessity than a style statement. Plus, if you wear a three-piece suit, that's typically always more formal than the equivalent two-piece suit. The double-breasted suit is also much more symmetrical and much more clearly resembles formal military uniforms of the past. Yes, if you look closely, it's not truly symmetrical, but from afar, the shape of the lapels, the double row of buttons, it's all very clean and symmetrical. As we explain in detail in our video, the history of the suit. First, it was the so-called lounge suit, and it was meant to be an casual alternative to otherwise a morning coat ensemble or a frock coat ensemble. So, to that extent, a suit, as we know it today, used to be the equivalent of what is today joggers, tracksuits, and trainers. Now, even today, if you see people who want to look particularly formal, they most often gravitate towards a double-breasted suit. Think about King Charles III. He definitely wears a lot of double-breasted suits, and so do his brothers. His sons, on the other hand, are more often seen with single-breasted jackets, even though they also have double-breasted ones. Even though suits in general in this day and age are considered to be a very formal garment, I'd argue that dressing down and casualize a double-breasted suit is a bit more tricky than a single-breasted suit. Why is that? First of all, a double-breasted suit often looks odd without some form of neckwear, whether it's a bow tie or a tie, but having that makes your ensemble more formal. Of course, there are many ways to dress down a double-breasted suit. One of them is, for example, accessories. So rather than a print tie, you take a tie in shantung silk or a knit tie, for example. You could also have maybe a brushed cotton shirt or a linen shirt or something that makes it less formal. But we cover all that stuff in different videos in our channel. The fifth reason double-breasted suits have fallen out of favor is because they confuse a lot of men these days. Especially if you're new to classic men's clothing and you're learning the ropes, you may be intimidated by it. Maybe it feels like this is not something you can quite yet wear. I think the rules around double-breasted jackets are particularly intimidating. Double-breasted jackets should always have a peak lapel. But why? Again, it has to do with historic associations with military clothing. Now, if you have a tuxedo or a dinner jacket, you could have a double-breasted silhouette with a shawl collar, for example. Another area of confusion and intimidation are button configurations and buttoning rules. Most commonly, double-breasted jackets come in a 6x2 button configuration. That means there's an overall of 6 buttons in the front, 2 of which are actually buttoned. But there can also be a 4x2 button configuration, meaning 4 buttons, 2 of which are buttoned, or a 4x1, or an 8x3, or a 6x1. Or, sorry, I got carried away, but honestly, there's even a 2x1. So how exactly should you button a jacket? First of all, we got a whole video on that topic, but ultimately it comes down to your personal preference. Some jackets are meant to be buttoned on the higher button, which is typically closer to the waistline. Sometimes people also leave the bottom button unbuttoned to make it a bit more casual. Now, if you take the same jacket and you start buttoning the lower button, you also have to make sure that the inside button is also buttoned lower. Otherwise, your lapels will look asymmetrical. But if you button both on the lower buttons, you can see how your lapels visually appear bigger than before. My point is, all these rules can be intimidating, thus making double-breasted jackets harder to wear, because it's yet another reason to not wear them, because you may do something wrong. Now, the good thing about rules is, truly, they're more like guidelines. And someone at some point in time thought about them and came up with that rule. But especially if you know the rule, you can definitely break it if it works better with your style. The sixth reason double-breasted suits have fallen out of favor is the innovation in the fabric sector. Now, over the last 100 years, fabrics have undergone quite an innovation. Especially the finishing has gotten so much better, the fibers are finer, and when you touch wool of today, it can be super smooth and just marvelous to the touch. At the same time, along with climate change, the demand of male customers has gone towards lighter weight fabric. Because a lot of people associate lighter weight fabrics with less overheating. They don't think about the shoddy interlining or the openness of the weave, all of which are factors which impact the way you feel when wearing a suit. That being said, lighter weight fabrics in general drape less well as heavier weight fabrics. Now, double-breasted suits traditionally had more of a drape cut, and so they benefited from heavier fabrics. Back in the day, when your grandpa's suits were probably made in the USA, he would wear them much more frequently and he'd have much fewer suits. So today, you can afford more suits, you wear them less frequently. So fabrics don't have to withstand a whole lot anymore, and so they're not designed to be hard wearing really anymore. Now, this trend towards lighter weights is especially troublesome for double-breasted suits, as a lighter weight fabric will not create the same drape effect and just lead to more wrinkles, which is not desirable in most beholders' eyes. Or at least that's the stereotype. The suit I'm wearing here right now, for example, is made of an extremely fine wool. It's super soft, it's lightweight, and it's the equivalent of probably a Super 250s. Frankly, in general, I personally favor heavier fabrics because they drape better. But this length was given to me by Vitale Barbares Canonico, who made it for a specific anniversary. And frankly, it changed my mind a bit about these high twist, super fine fabrics, because it is really nice to wear them, even though you see a lot more wrinkles. After all, I don't want to look like a wrinkly paper bag. Although, if we talk linen suits, I actually appreciate the wrinkles. But that's stuff for another video. The seventh reason men stopped wearing double-breasted suits is that they're harder to fit off the rack. Obviously, 200 years ago, clothes were custom-made and expensive. But these days, the vast majority of men buy suits off the rack. Now, with a double-breasted suit and the fact that you have to wear it buttoned, potential fit issues become much more obvious, and the general consumer today lacks the knowledge of what can and cannot be tailored at an alterations tailor without a lot of investment. For all the reasons mentioned earlier, if you're new to suits and you have a choice between a single-breasted and a double-breasted, you probably will gravitate towards the single-breasted, especially if you see some more material bulging up and you don't know why that is, and you may not feel comfortable wearing this double-breasted suit. Also, the nature of double-breasted suit is that of symmetry, and human bodies are simply not symmetrical. I mean, just look at me. My right shoulder is a lot lower than my left one, for example. And that's the case for most people. They just don't know it yet. So, yes, making a double-breasted suit look good on you and doing all the proper alterations takes more effort and more money. And of course, if you buy an off-the-rack suit, ideally, you want to buy something that fits like a glove. Now, If that's your expectation, I think you'll always be disappointed because there is no such thing as a perfect fit from a suit off the rack. And if you think it is, probably your standards for a proper fit are just too low. In other words, I've never seen an off-the-rack suit that fit anyone perfectly, according to my standards. That being said, at this day and age, you can wear literally whatever you want, whenever you want, so take it with a grain of salt. Of course, you can remedy all these issues by getting a double-breasted suit made custom, bespoke, or made to measure. But that, of course, puts you in a very different price category, and a lot of people can't afford that. Last but not least, the 8th reason men stopped wearing double-breasted suits is that of perceived discomfort in a world that values nothing more but comfort. If you ask 10 men on the street if a suit is comfortable or uncomfortable, chances are they will say uncomfortable. Why is that? Well, chances are they only have a suit that is made with a stiff interlining that makes them sweat, that limits their range of movement. They probably have never experienced a suit with a soft interlining, a nicely tightly cut armhole, something that fits well and is designed to move around freely. Now, because of the military tradition of a double-breasted suit, it was traditionally made with stiffer interlinings because it was all about the looks. It was supposed to make the wearer look very majestic and impressive and strong. It wasn't really designed for comfort. And because of that, people will often associate double-breasted suit with discomfort. Now, the suit I'm wearing here right now, for example, it has an extremely soft interlining, and I intentionally went for that because I appreciate that. Now, there's nothing wrong with going for a more military-inspired, structured look, but yes, that won't be as comfortable as a soft interlining in a jacket. Off the rack, typically, it's hard to find soft interlinings in a double-breasted jacket or suit, so that's why people think, oh, it's a bit more comfortable, it's too formal. I don't like that, especially if they're the only person wearing a suit in the first place. On top of that, most men that I know are more prone to run hot than to run cold. So if you always run hot and you have the choice between two suits, one of which has a double layer of overlapping fabric in the front and the other doesn't, you probably gravitate towards the one that keeps you cooler and more comfortable. Of course, on the flip side, you could argue that double-breasted suits are particularly well suited for winter because it gives you that extra layer of cloth that keeps you warmer. By the way, for the same reason, I appreciate double-breasted overcoats. Not only do they look much nicer than their single-breasted cousins, but they also keep you warmer. Of course, I could go on about the misconceptions of why suits in general are uncomfortable, and it really comes down to the material, the interlining and how breathable it is, because there's a difference between a glued interlining and a full layered canvas, which is much more breathable. And then on top of that, often cheaper suits have actual lining made out of polyester, which makes you sweat a lot more than, let's say, Bemberg or Kupro, which is naturally anti-static and much more breathable and can also absorb things just to make you feel more comfortable. So now that we established why men stopped wearing double-breasted suits, the question arises why we at the Gentleman's Gazette think that there should be a resurgence of double-breasted suits. First of all, if a lot of people don't wear them, it gives you a chance to stand out from the crowd in a positive way. It can almost be like a hallmark for you to wear double-breasted suits. And people will notice, oh, you're so well dressed, even though they may not be able to put their finger on it right away. Wearing a double-breasted suit can be a massive confidence boost if you wear the suit and the suit doesn't wear you. Let's say if you give a presentation or you're in a position where people look at you, or if you substitute for the Godfather. Even if you rarely wear a suit, nothing else can give you quite that elegance and capture that personality that a double-breasted suit does. And frankly, even if you aren't in the best shape, a double-breasted suit can help create that illusion of a broad shoulder with an attractive V shape. This clean silhouette is incredibly masculine, timeless, and elegant. And yes, if you look at all the heroes, they typically have that V shape, and that's what a double-breasted suit will give you. It also shows that you pay attention to details and don't just grab the first best suit that comes across your way. Of course, if you're a fan of the golden era of menswear, you must wear a double-breasted suit, because just the feeling of it, especially paired with the fabric, puts you in a certain mindset. And yes, while it's true that generally double-breasted jackets are more formal, there's certainly ways to deformalize your double-breasted suit or jacket. For example, you can add mother-of-pearl buttons. In a bright white, it's more casual. There's also brown or gray, for example. Or if you don't want mother-of-pearl, you can use horn buttons. But like a blonde horn button on a navy jacket is definitely more casual than a tone-in-tone, dark blue or dark brown. Plus, if you do that, the jacket can easily function as a standalone blazer, but also work in a suit outfit, which means matching pair and pants made from the same fabric. Last but not least, there's a certain cachet that comes with double-breasted suits. What have Humphrey Bogart, Cary Grant, and Clark Gable in common? Well, they all loved wearing double-breasted suits. So in conclusion, while double-breasted suits have certainly fallen out of favor in the mainstream clothing world, there's still a place for them, especially for people who appreciate clothes. Few articles of clothing can give you that much personality without being flashy or over the top. Despite the fact that some might consider them difficult to wear, if you follow the Gentleman's Gazette, will help you look your best in a double-breasted suit. So no matter if you make double-breasted suits your signature style or just have a one-off suit or anything in between, they'll help you stand out from the crowd. What's your favorite double-breasted suit? Please share with us in the comments below. For today's video, I had to choose which double-breasted suit I wanted to wear, because I have quite a few ones in all different ranges of formality. I have one in a gray window pane flannel, which is awesome. I have one in a brown Prince of Wales check, or a petrol blue fresco, or a double-breasted kind of 1930s gangster-style suit from Ralph Lauren. But I opted for this very classic, solid navy double-breasted suit. Why? Well, I wanted you to look at the silhouette of a double-breasted suit and not be distracted by the fabric. As I mentioned, this was a very fine fabric that almost feels like cashmere from Vitale Barbari's Canonico. I had it custom made for me, but it was on one of the earlier suits with a tailor, so I have a little bit of a gapping when I move my arm, which I'm not quite fond of, but I could have it fixed at the alterations tailor. You can see the buttoning point is rather high, is that 6x2 silhouette, and I like the wider lapels with a nice Milanese large buttonholes. I'm combining it with a blue and white striped shirt made from an Albini fabric and a orange mottled silk knit tie by Fort Belvedere, which you might find in our shop, just like the handmade silk boutonniere and the silk wool pocket square. For the pants, I had two forward-facing pleats that gave me more room in my thigh. I had a turn-up or a cuff, and I paired it with shadow striped socks in navy and royal blue, likewise by Fort Belvedere. And the shoes are from Alton. They had a custom patina in brown, and they're an unusual monk with some broguing. In terms of timepiece, I went with a Nomos Tangente blue gold in a 39mm width. It's a very elegant watch, and the dial really goes perfectly with this type of a navy suit. I'm wearing it with the default black Horween leather watch strap, even though I think that could be a different one. My other metal accessories are a pinky ring with a star sapphire and baguette diamonds, as well as cufflinks, which are the monkey fistnut cufflinks in silver that are platinum plated from Fort Belvedere. Because my dress shirt is blue and white, I grabbed a pair of suspenders in blue boxcloth with white leather from Eduard Meyer in Munich. And along with that blue color scheme, the scent of the day is the Roberto Ugolini blue suede shoe scent. As you might know, Roberto Ugolini makes high-end bespoke shoes in Florence, but he's also a connoisseur of fragrances, which is why he lent his name to a line of scents.